Crank up the volume and get ready for real-world bird hunting by listening to the Wingmen podcast by Eastman's. Now your host, Todd Helms.
Hey, sports fans, welcome to another episode of the Wingmen podcast. This episode's guest is Jim Huntsman with the Western Huntsman. Jim, you're kind of a jack of all trades, man. You've got a lot of irons in the fire. Tell us who you are and what you do.
Well, I think maybe that's why I'm not good at one particular thing. I've got too much going on or something. I don't know.
That's not what I've heard, but we'll go with that.
We can roll with that. Yeah, no, I just a dude up here in North Idaho, hunting the West and real passionate about it. Been hunting my entire life and a lot of irons in the fire in terms of what I hunt. So I don't have any one thing that I'm, get more involved with than the other one in terms of species that I chase. But a few years back, I've been writing in the hunting industry for a while and decided to go ahead and start a podcast. And the idea was to get some, people passionate of this thing we do, this primal thing we do, hunting, and pursue it on a level to where we can kind of build this coalition against the anti-hunting movement that has been growing rapidly and strongly over the last, couple of decades. The thought was I would just kind of have some conversations locally here in Idaho and deal with Idaho issues. And next thing I know, we're getting downloads all over the world. So pretty cool.
Good for you, man.
Yeah.
I knew that the combating the anti-hunting movement was a big hot button topic for you, and
Yep.
I'd like to talk about that. What you do and kind of what your take on all of it is, and your basically your dos pesos about it. I know how I feel. I think we probably have some pretty common ground on all of it. But North Idaho. So back to the hunting thing. Were you out chasing bears most recently, or?
Yeah, I'm neck deep in bear season, man. we had a really bad winter. And so just a ton of snow, right? And so it's been a cold spring. The snow hasn't melted. So the spot I'm normally hunting it's been, inaccessible. So I had to find I bait for bears. It's super thick. We call it the North Idaho jungle up here. Super thick. There is some spot and stock opportunities, and a lot of people run hounds, and a lot of us bait. And baiting seems to be the best way to kind of select the right bear that you're after. And there's a little bit of controversy around baiting, but at the end of the day, we're all hunters. We're all looking for the same end game. And it's a great way. We've got like a biologist told me somewhere around 4 bears per square mile up here.
Wow.
So it's a huge number. Most of them are small. So I've just been waiting for the big guy to walk. I've got this little, he's probably a 2 or 3 year old bear, and he's just super comical coming in to my bait barrel. And I sit and watch him tip my barrel over and bend it and get all the popcorn out. And, he just has a ball. But yeah, it's fun, man. So I'm, as soon as we're done recording, I'm heading right back up there.
Cool. Yeah, no, thank you for being flexible. We actually bumped this ahead an hour so I could get to a Little League game and you could get to the bear stand. So no,
exactly.
That's perfect. Well, that's a lot of bears, man. They have got to be extremely hard on your ungulate population. And I know that country where you are is thick. Like you said, that North Idaho country is very difficult to hunt with spot and stock methods. Not that you can't do it, like you said, but it reminds me a lot of kind of where I grew up. We had 2 options for hunting bears. It was bait or hounds. Yeah. And with the wolf situation taking off in the Northern Great Lakes, a lot of guys have quit running hounds. Yeah. They're just getting their dogs chomped every time they turn them loose.
Yeah, that happens here quite a bit too.
Does it?
Yeah. Yeah. Now, where are you at?
So we're in Powell, Wyoming.
Oh, that's right. Okay.
Yep.
So you're down there with Scott Reekers and all those guys down with you.
Yep, absolutely. Awesome. Yeah. In fact,
yeah.
Scott's not. I'm looking at his office right now. He's not in this afternoon. But yeah, this is Eastman's headquarters. That's Wingmen's a part of that. And one more cog in the whole wheel of Eastman's media and Eastman's publishing.
Good deal. Yeah, that's awesome. I love the Powell area and the Cody area. We used to go there all the time. Bear with me. I'm trying to figure out. So I'm recording. If you can see behind me, this is my hunting trailer.
You're in a camper.
I am, and I'm trying to figure out why this air conditioner won't turn on, because you can see in the video I'm sweating. So yeah, my wife and I, we sold our house last year, down in Kootenai County, Idaho.
Okay.
And moved up further north, and we're homesteading up here. So we actually live in a fifth wheel, and the new Broken Time studio where we record our podcast is right here, man, right in this hunting trailer.
I love it. I love it.
That's the life. If I can get this AC to work, we'll be in good shape.
There you go. Yeah, it's a warm one down here today. We're on the tails of all that massive flooding that Yellowstone got, and Montana. Those poor folks in Montana, man, they definitely got the worst of it. We're the watershed systems that we're on here in the Bighorn Basin are all controlled by dams. And so we don't have to worry about the flooding that those big freestone rivers do. And, Red Lodge, Montana got absolutely crushed, and they're only only like 50 miles north of us.
Oh, wow.
So it was brutal.
Yeah, I've been watching that. I saw that video that I think it was the Yellowstone River took out that cabin.
Yeah.
Which was like housing for the park service.
Yeah, it was employee
or something.
Yeah. It was employee housing. And they evacuated Yellowstone for the first time in the history of the park. Most of them, they sent them out through Jackson just because that's the safest way out of the park. It's relatively flat to get into Jackson. If you want to come into Cody, you got to go over a pretty steep mountain pass, and it's with that kind of flooding and avalanche danger and everything, and mudslides just was not a good option for folks. But yeah, definitely, prayers are with those folks in Gardner and Mammoth and Red Lodge and all the other towns. Billings has been without drinking water for, I think, going on 2 days, maybe 3 days now. They had to shut down their water treatment facility. And that's,
I didn't know that.
Yeah, that's a city of over 100,000 people without drinking water.
Yeah.
So
that's crazy. I mean, we've got some minor flooding going up up here, like on the Clark Fork River and whatnot, but nothing like that. I didn't know. How did the Shoshone River fare coming out of Yellowstone there?
I mean, it got huge. It got as big as bigger than it's ever been. But like I said, they draw down the reservoirs to the point where there's hardly any water in them in the wintertime, and they got to fill them back up. So they let a bunch of water through. So the river here south of Powell that we duck hunt on primarily is raging at the moment, but it's coming down. But yeah, I mean, all this country, we went from ridiculous snowpack in the high country. I mean, you'd look out towards Cody and it looked like February up there. It was just solid white. And now it looks like July when you look up there. There's not a lot of snow left. Not a lot of snow left. But yeah, it's been nuts. Like I said, we were spared here. I know a gentleman who I had on the podcast back when we first started, Alex Langbell with Gundog Outdoors. He moved just north of us from Washington State. He's in Bridger, Montana. And I called him and was like, dude, you need anything? Is there anything I can help you with? And he was scrambling. He was scrambling to save his house, basically.
Man.
And so I was like, I'm going to let you go, dude. You do what you need to do. If you need anything, you holler,
We had that scenario up here with wildfires. I was helping buddies move that lived up in certain areas, their homes actually made it. The fires were getting super close and they evacuated them, but the flooding, I don't know what does more damage, man. Cause you look at that highway coming out of the north end of Yellowstone there. I mean, that sucker is completely washed out, and it's going to take forever to fix.
Yeah. And I would bet money that they try to reroute that to the best of their ability. Country coming there between Gardner and Mammoth it's pretty steep. There's a lot of topography to deal with, but I would bet that where they can, they reroute that away from that river.
God, it's crazy. Yeah. Well, praying for him. At least last I heard, nobody's been hurt yet. So
nobody got hurt. No fatalities. Praise God. It's one of those things that how that happened, it's an act of God. That's all
sure.
that's all there was to it. But yeah, it's been interesting. I took the wife and kids and dogs for a walk around Powell here the other night, and there were tourists walking around in downtown little farm town Powell. They're waving, there are a bunch of Asian tourists, and they're like, hi, I'm like,
oh wow,
and it dawned on me, they're all displaced. They were all in the park, and they had to get out. So yeah, it's been
it's probably good for the local Powell economy, right?
Oh yeah. You hate to look at a silver lining like that, but yeah, no doubt.
Yeah.
But well, hey, back to the anti-hunting thing. I know that's something that you're passionate about. And I am too, but tell us what, what's the fight you're fighting?
Well, what's going on? The hard part for me is trying to have this discussion in a reasonable way with people that are very unreasonable about what their perception of wildlife and wildlife management and conservation is. And so it's bothered me for a long time, but the more that it grows, and it grows out of these large metro areas, we're talking places like San Francisco and Seattle, Washington, Atlanta, Georgia, these places where they're so far removed from the realities on the ground of, for example, wolf management or bear hunting, and how bear hunting is a management tool that benefits all species. And so, you're trying to have these logical discussions with people that are just absolutely drenched in emotion around the topic. And all they want to do is they've made up their mind that hunting is bad because animals get hurt and we need to just leave them alone. And the problem with that concept is, it goes against the North American model of wildlife conservation, which is one of the most solidly proven systems on the face of the planet. And two, it's just not based in reality, from a sense that we live in a world where we have big cities, we have highways, we have reservoirs, we have trains, all these things that kind of choke off wildlife from their decade or hundreds of years of moving around from summer range to winter range and all these things, that it's not realistic with the way we have developed North America to expect wildlife to just thrive on their own without any kind of human intervention. And it's also not the way it's ever been done prior to, us being here, and the institutions such as the United States Forest Service and the United States Fish and Wildlife Service. All these things didn't exist, but we had Native Americans on the landscape that were managing these animals to benefit them and the animals, because they understood the balance. Prior to that, nature did that, when we had the big cats on the landscape around the end of the Pleistocene there. And I'm kind of specifically talking about wolves, but when you take all this emotion, and it's so easy to propagate an emotional argument and put it in a tweet or a 30-second commercial on TV with Sarah McLachlan singing in the background kind of thing, and just really pull on the heartstrings of folks that are so far removed from it. It's very difficult for us to fight. And so my goal is to find ways to simplify this argument, because our issue isn't the anti-hunters themselves. The recent research I've done, we've got about 5% roughly of the American population are active hunters, active tag holding hunters. You could say roughly 4 to 5% of the population are active anti-hunters. It's that 90% that's in between. And the messaging for us to come at this from a very statistically driven and science driven standpoint with, this is how the North American model of wildlife conservation works. This is why hunting is a conservation tool and a wildlife management tool. It bores people and their eyes glaze over, where it's much easier to approach it from an anti-hunting message and say, well, bears are cute and we shouldn't shoot them. Right. And so that's been the challenge. And it is ongoing and as strong as ever.
It's interesting that you say that I was going to ask you what percentage of, anti-hunters. And what I mean by that is these are the folks that want to end it all. At, whatever cost necessary, they want to end it all. This is not that 90% that is kind of like, yeah, okay, you want to hunt, do you eat it? Do you do this? Do whatever that may be. That's where our messaging, and that's what I heard you saying, is that's where our logical messaging needs to go towards. And we have done, correct me if I'm wrong, Jim, but we have done a horrible job of PR when it comes to the North American model of wildlife conservation.
Absolutely. Most people, that 90% of non-hunters, again, these are people that they don't hunt, and they're not necessarily for or against hunting, right? But it's the 90%, the average person out there. They don't even know what the North American model of wildlife conservation is. They're when I talked about like the 5% of anti-hunters, they're even broken into like two groups where it's only like 2% of that 5% are like those real fanatical, activist types, the folks that are involved with like the Humane Society of the United States or Center for Biological Diversity, organizations like that. So the other 3%, they're against hunting, but they're not like activists. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and 100%. And it's that fringe minority of that group that those are the ones that I struggle with the most, because those are the ones that, we're trying, for lack of a better term, I feel like ever since I was a kid, that anti-hunting movement has been there. And it's always been hunters taking it upon themselves to educate and to talk, calmly and logically too. Yeah. And that fringe minority faction seems like it's grown. That activist faction seems like it's grown.
Absolutely it has.
And there is zero way to reach those folks.
Yeah, exactly. And we've got kind of two issues with that. The first one being, like I was saying, before I go there, when you look at the population in the United States and Canada, and usually when I refer to like the North American population, I'm mainly talking about the United States and Canada.
Right.
Because Mexico has they don't have like a real strong anti-hunting, movement down there like North America or the rest of us do up north. So when you look at our population, it's roughly 80 to 85%, they say, are they are not opposed to hunting, and they view hunting as a something that people do as if it's like a hobby. You and I both know, like for me, hunting is not a hobby. Hunting is my life. Hunting it's not like collecting bottle caps or baseball cards. This is my lifestyle. This is how I feed my family, and now my kids are involved in it, and it's been that way in my family for a long time. So we've got that going for us, where it's the general population. The majority of them are not opposed. That doesn't mean they're for hunting, but they're not opposed to it either. Those are the ones that can be easily swayed by propagated messages. And a lot of this comes from like the Humane Society of the United States.
Right.
They put out these misconstrued data about bow hunting wounds 70% of the animals and only 20% of them are recovered or whatever, but they're using one dumb study that was done back in the 90s on a military installation where the lethality and the just the efficacy of bow equipment and archery equipment back then wasn't what it is today. And not to mention it was a skewed study. Anyways, I'm going down a rabbit trail with that, but
no, you're good.
But that is what they do, and they'll take that and act like it's brand new information, and like it's all these scientists and wildlife biologists are on board with it, and they put that messaging out there, and these people fall for it, and they end up donating money to like the United States, or I keep saying that wrong, Humane Society of the United States.
Yeah.
You see, I get a little worked up, so I start mispronouncing stuff.
You're good, man.
But and that's our challenge, because again, going back to like a tweet, it's easy to say, put a picture on social media of a wounded black bear, for example, or a sow that was taken, that maybe a lactating sow that had cubs, and a hunter accidentally shot, which ends up being roughly less than 1% of what
it's a
black bear
tiny
take
number. It's a
tiny number. But they'll take that one picture of this lactating sow that was killed by a hunter, and they'll put it up on Twitter and just write, bear hunters poach a sow with cubs and leave them orphaned, kind of thing. And that message, somebody sitting in downtown Seattle, Washington will look at that and be like, man, their perception on hunters is like negative all of a sudden. And it's hard to change that back. It's hard to convince them that that's not the lion's share of what hunting is and hunting ethics. And then to your point, what you were talking about, the imagery problem that we have as hunters, social media has not helped this. And we look at the way, I guess to put it this way, like my dad and my grandfathers, they didn't feel like there was a necessity to have an image for hunters, right? It was just a thing that most people did, and it was accepted widely. There wasn't like an active anti-hunting movement back then. So there was no necessity to come out and say, we need to fix our imagery problem. We need to rethink the way that we represent ourselves as hunters. And we need to think about how we communicate what hunting is to non-hunters. And so, we would sit around and, tote dead deer on the top of a station wagon back in the day, and blood dripping down the side of the car.
Yep.
You remember the station wagon, right?
Oh, dude. I grew up in Michigan. So it was like, and I grew up in the Upper Peninsula. So when we would go downstate for Thanksgiving and come back, we would count the dead deer on the tops of vehicles.
Yeah.
Coming the other way on I-75, going the other way. And 90% of the time it was a buck or two with a Christmas tree tied to the top at the same time.
Oh, yeah.
It was just, and it was just what happened.
It was the norm. It was just the norm, right?
Yeah, not anymore.
No, it's not that way. And, like where I live here in Clark Fork, Idaho, it's not abnormal to see a dead deer in the back of a truck or something.
Yeah.
The difference is how we transport them, like through downtown Seattle to go home, or Denver, Colorado or something. But the point is the necessity to have a good image and representation of what hunting is a new thing. Because the anti-hunting movement is a new thing. This is not, they act like this is some old-fashioned thing to be against hunting, and there's always been those kind of people, and sure, maybe to an extent there was on a small level, but nobody knew about them. Nobody had to worry about that back in the 1950s and 60s and 70s, and it really is a relatively new thing. And social media has compounded that. So when we get people that represent hunting in a negative light, or I'll give you another great example. Somebody poached some elk, I think in Oregon recently.
Yeah.
The anti-hunting movement, they take that information and they put it out as headlines as if it were hunters.
Right.
Well, Todd, you and I, we don't poach, so we're not poachers.
Right.
Poachers are not hunters. And so it's just, man, it's an uphill battle. And it's something that we just can't take our foot off the gas with. We just saw what happened in Washington with their spring bear hunt. And that's all what it comes down to. The anti-hunting movement won in Washington regarding the spring bear hunt solely and strictly based on emotion.
Yep.
Because even the Washington biologists were saying, no, the bear population is very robust. It's very healthy. The spring bear hunt is a great way to manage the species. Lactating subs were less than 1% of the take. In fact, there was like 1 out of 230 some odd bears taken last year in spring bear. There was a lactating sow. There was no evidence that the cubs were even still alive, because we all know, a male black bear will easily take out cubs. Mm-hmm. And so that's what happens. That messaging grasps the public turns against something, and the governor will elect commissioners that really have no business being wildlife commissioners, and we lose a hunting season.
Yeah. It is that emotion behind it is probably the most frustrating part for me. I remember before I moved to Wyoming 15 years ago, we got an initiative on the ballot in Michigan to institute a morning dose season. And man, in the rural areas, it did pretty well. In the greater Detroit metropolitan area, not a chance.
So
not a chance. And it was all emotion-driven rhetoric.
Yeah. Too many kids grew up on Bambi and feel bad for him, right? And so
100%.
And that's another issue is Hollywood has a tendency to like humanize these animals, and it kind of develops that emotion. But I was going to ask you on you said morning doe hunt. Is that one of those hunts where
morning doves, the bird?
Oh, morning doves.
Yep.
Sorry, I misheard you.
No, it's okay. It's okay.
Because I've heard of these states that have these hunting seasons that like end at noon or something like that. You can only hunt from sun up to noon or whatever.
Right.
Yeah,
It wasn't that, but
I think that's for turkey.
Yeah, in a lot of states you can't hunt past noon.
Yeah.
But back to the social media thing. The image that we portray is important because we know there's 90% of folks out there who come across that stuff, and if it's portrayed well, it's a positive thing.
Yeah.
They look at it and go, oh, that's pretty cool. Or, man, that's interesting. We have a couple of videos that are just blew up on Facebook, and especially Facebook. One is a pheasant hunting video. The other one it's like a greatest hits compilation type video, and they have millions of views. A lot of the comments are very much, what do you do with those birds? What do you eat those birds? Are you just killing those birds for sport? And it shows a massive misunderstanding of what it's about. And neither one of those videos is distasteful. None of the stuff. I try really hard on my social media accounts for Wingmen to be tasteful and to be honest about what we do and portray what we do. And we're appealing to hunters, but there's that segment out there that doesn't hunt, that's on the fence about it. And so when we post that stuff, being tasteful and being respectful is important. What's your take on that? How do you approach that?
I think there's two levels, Todd, from my perspective, in terms of you have the extreme stuff. And I'll give you a great example. A couple of years back, I don't know if you saw this, but a couple of teenagers, 18, 19 years old, maybe they'd shot a deer. And I want to say it was in the South somewhere, took the deer back and had it hanging in the garage there. And were pouring beer into the chest cavity with another teenager underneath the deer's mouth, right? This little buck. And they're like shooting or chugging. What do you call that? Shotgunning the beer or whatever?
Chugging. Yeah, whatever.
Yeah. Chug. It's been a while since I've been able to handle something like that. So, but they're shotgunning beer into the orifice of the esophagus of this deer, and it's coming out bloody, and the kid is under there drinking it. And then they post it on Facebook. The video goes absolutely berserk, wild. What do you think Aunt Betty in downtown Denver or, wherever, St. Louis, sees a video like that? What is her perception permanently of hunters going to be? That's the extreme case. You have stuff like that. That's obviously super distasteful. And they were young guys. They didn't mean harm, but it's that kind of lack of foresight.
Yes.
That, it just does so much damage to us, so that's that side of it. There's that extreme. And we have a lot of hunters out there that are like, well, I don't care. I am who I am. This is what I do. I'm going to post this, picture or video or whatever. And you can hear the bear doing the death moan kind of things for all of Facebook to hear. It's stuff like that just tugs at the heartstrings. And I don't want to lecture people on what kind of content they put out. I'm not one of those guys.
And that wasn't my intent with this question at all.
But we do have to consider that social media is very public, and it is also, this is where the anti-hunters lurk in the shadows. and they're just waiting for stuff like that. They could totally take a picture or a video and take it totally out of context and reach thousands upon thousands of people that will have a negative reaction and a negative perception of hunters in the future. So I don't know what the solution to that is, because I like a good grip and grin, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, I love it.
As you should.
And,
you know,
and we're all hunters.
about,
yeah.
Yes. And you were talking about that unapologetic passion for what we do and what we love. And that has to be there.
Yeah, for sure.
But we have to think at the same time. You know, there was a thing in the waterfowl world going around a year ago, maybe a little bit more, where there'd be a guy standing there, you know, and guys off camera would be throwing the dead birds into the frame.
Oh,
and
yeah. I think I know
piles and piles of
about.
Dead birds, you know, like it's raining ducks, you know. And I remember thinking at the time when I saw that, I was like, man, use your head. You know, it's like, look at that message. It's not apologizing for what we're passionate about to be tasteful, you know, where you're showing in my world, you know, it's posing your pile picks, because the pile pick is the equivalent of the grip and grin in the big game world, you know. But there's a way to do it tastefully, and where it celebrates, like, this hunt was phenomenal. Look at this. This is what we did. This is the result of hard scouting and preparation and, you know, all these things. And the success should be celebrated. Yeah. But there's a way to do it, you know?
Yeah. And that's where we run into trouble, Todd, is like, who determines the way to do it? Like, who decides that? You know what I mean? And I don't presume to have the answer to that, because, like I said, I like a good grip and grin. I've had pictures, I posted pictures with my tailgate down with a bunch of pheasants on the back of it. That kind of stuff. Again, that is what feeds into our lifestyle. We're used to that. It doesn't, for us, we're telling a story, and we need to be better at telling our story, because we are, again, as hunters, this is another issue that we face, and what the anti-hunters use against us. As hunters, we're super divided, man. I mean, we get people that want a fist fight over whether or not shooting a 6.5 Creedmoor is a good rifle or not, you know? And it's just,
you're absolutely right to the point where I am sure that somebody listening to this, maybe several people, are going to be like, well, who made you the pile pick police? You know, you know, how dare you question the way that that's not what I'm saying. I'm urging folks to think about how that stuff comes across before they put it on social media. You know, that's just simply because
I always say, oh, sorry, I cut you off, Todd.
No, man, go for it.
Yeah, no, I always say, like, on my show, I talk about, if you are going to post a picture or a video or something, or any kind of hunting content, just think about, how will this be perceived by non-hunters? Will this do damage to our image? You know, just ask that question. Hunting can be ugly business, right? I mean, we've all done things. I've wounded an elk. I've wounded a deer. It's not always pretty. Sometimes you hit an animal and you just hit it in that spot. It just makes an absolute bloodbath. Non-hunters really don't need to experience that part of it, right?
Sure.
And I'm not saying that we need to hide what it is or anything like that. That's because that's always, well, what are you saying? Be dishonest? No, it's not. I'm not saying be dishonest about what happens out there. I'm saying tell the story right. Tell the story right. What is the point of showing a bloodbath on social media, or a wounded animal? And what was that video? Those kids kicking and beating up on that wounded deer. They hit the deer, and stuff like that. Man, that just does years of damage to us. So we're all hunters. Really, we are a family. We're all in this together, and so we all have to be somewhat cognizant as to what it is we are portraying ourselves as, because there's a lot of people that already see us as these savage rednecks that just want to go kill shit, right? And that's not the point. We're conservationists. We care about these animals. We love these animals. And I'll give you a great example. This is why I hate when somebody gets a bear and they're like, oh, he's not very big, but hey, I saved some fawns. Well, that's not the point of bear hunting. I killed another fawn killer, got rid of one more fawn killer. And what you're doing is you're portraying it in a sense that makes it look like we have this adversarial relationship with the wildlife. Like the bear is not my enemy, right? The bear is not my enemy. I am hunting a bear for to fulfill this primal passion and fill my freezer and have these memories and have these stories and achieve something that I set out to achieve and accomplish. I don't hate bears, and so I go shoot them, right? That's not the story. And so it's how we tell the story. I don't know if any of this is making sense, Todd, but
no, it does. It does.
Yeah.
Because if I take that, what you just said, and I rewind this conversation back to the beginning where you're talking about you're itching to get in the bear stand this evening, and you got this one little bear that's young, and he's really fun to watch. If you hated bears, if this was an adversarial relationship, you'd have killed him the first night you saw him. And you'd have killed every other bear that you saw as well. Yeah. And that is not it. That is not what we do. That is not what big game guys do. That is not what wing shooters do, whether it's upland birds or waterfowl or turkey guys. There's a real situation in the world of turkey hunting right now where they're really questioning methods of take, where, the whole reaping thing where you're fanning a bird and they come running right up to you and you shoot them at point blank range. And it can be an incredibly effective method of harvest.
I've never even heard of that.
It's interesting. It is controversial. It didn't used to be when it started, but it is now. And I think the biggest argument for why it's controversial is that there's the turkey populations in the southeastern United States and in many other parts of the U.S. are really struggling.
I've heard that.
They're losing birds. Yeah, they're losing birds bad. Yeah. And to the point where almost every state has restructured its turkey seasons, kind of like taking the rifle elk hunts away during the rut.
Yeah, I mean turkey hunting is like that, especially in the southeast. I mean that's a religion like like NASCAR. You can't take away, and it's always crazy for me to hear that too, because we're borderline problematic with our turkey numbers up here. They're everywhere. In fact, this morning there was one just gobbling his head off as I was cooking breakfast, and he's just down there gobbling his head off, and season's over now at this point. Yeah. But it's crazy. He's gobbling like he's acting like that this late in the year. But anyway, but to your point, Todd, like I can't remember who said it, but if there's this hashtag, and I think the RMEF uses this line: hunting is conservation. Uh-huh. If hunting is conservation, we have to pay attention to that kind of stuff. If the turkey numbers are suffering, we as hunters, we are the reason why the turkey numbers came up to the point in what they are, right? We created this. And so if they're suffering, we have to be the solution, because you could bet money that PETA is not going to be the solution. No. The Humane Society of the United States, they are not the solution. They do nothing for wildlife conservation. And it's us. It's on our shoulders.
100%. You don't see those organizations dumping money back into conservation. It doesn't happen. They use that money to further their agenda and to pay salaries of executives. That's what they do. And across the hunting world, I don't care if it's RMEF or Ducks Unlimited or the National Turkey Foundation. You could name all these nonprofits, the MDF, Mule Deer Foundation. You could go through the list, and those nonprofits exist to put animals back into the ecosystem and to improve their habitat. That's what they exist to do. And PETA doesn't, Humane Society doesn't, and I guess to dwell on the Humane Society thing for one moment. If you're listening to this and you hear us saying the Humane Society, the Humane Society of the United States, HSUS, right?
Yep.
That is the largest anti-hunting organization on the planet. Am I wrong?
No, you're absolutely right. And
Yeah.
they're not linked locally to your local Humane
There you
Society
go.
shelter.
There you go.
I think that's where you're going, right?
That's exactly where I was going. You know,
Yeah.
you go in the grocery store and you see the empty coffee can with the picture of the kitten, you know, taped to the front of it. And it's, help support your local Humane Society shelter.
Yeah.
You know,
that's a different organization.
Exactly. Yeah. And I don't think people understand that. And so, and I think hunters aren't aware, not all of us, but I think some of us aren't aware that when we're talking about the Humane Society of the United States, that's your biggest enemy out there. And you better recognize it.
They are definitely public enemy number one. Their CEO, Kitty Block, is paid just under $1 million somewhere. I mean, don't quote me exactly which, because I don't. They keep that pretty hush hush. But I looked it up. Their charity navigator is pretty harsh with them because of how they go about getting donations, right? And versus where they put that money. And it's a corrupt organization that takes all this money. I mean, we're talking, again, I'm going off the top of my head. I'm trying to think of, I could be way off on this, but I want to say that I found it was around $300 million annually. And for what? This organization is responsible for getting a big retailer to stop selling fur coats and saved some dogs from a family with COVID-19. That's basically what the claim of fame on their website is. So you have $300 million, and that's all you could say you've done for animals and wildlife conservation. And you're always coming at these legislators in low-hanging fruit areas like San Francisco and Seattle, and getting them to initiate legislation to ban certain hunts. Like they were behind the California bear ban, HB, name, whatever the number was, that failed. They're also behind and involved in the spring bear hunt issue in Washington. So in what I argue is they actually do more detrimental and damaging harm to wildlife than they do any good. And you compare that to what the National Turkey Federation has done. And what the Mule Deer Foundation has done, what the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation has done, or Idaho Wildlife Federation, you know, all these organizations that we have that are actually focused on using their resources that they get, whether it's through a banquet or other donations. They're taking those resources, putting their money where their mouth is. And that's why we have such robust whitetail populations and turkey, like turkeys, the turkey, we have a lot of Merriams and Easterns up here. They're not native to Idaho, North Idaho. The reason why they're all over the place, and I was able to take my daughters out and they both tagged out on their first turkey ever this spring, was because of hunters and hunting dollars and donations from hunting organizations. It's not PETA or the HSUS or Center for Biological Diversity or that super kooky group out of Oregon. I'm going to they had a proposition where
no, it's still there.
IP13.
IP13.
They wanted to rename it though. I think they tried
to rename it so it would be something different. But right now to the point where if you're going to AI a cow, you're going to be guilty of sexual misconduct. Basically,
yes, sexual misconduct, sexual.
Basically,
assault. You are sexually
offender.
Assaulting a horse because you're artificially inseminating this horse because of the racing bloodlines or something.
Right.
I mean, it's ludicrous. And I actually tried to get the leader of that group. I can't remember what his name is. I invited him to come on my show to defend this ludicrous petition. And he answered me back and he said, well, as long as we can agree that as humans, we are animals too, and we shouldn't, we have to agree that no animals should ever die for humans. And I responded to him, well, that's never going to happen. And if we're animals, are you going to tell the wolf not to kill an elk or a deer? I mean, that doesn't even make any sense. But come on my show and talk about it. And they never will. I've invited, I don't know how many anti-hunting leaders onto my program, and they either blatantly ignore me or they send some phony baloney response as to why they can't. And it's because a debate, a debate based in maturity and reasonability cannot be had between a person that comes at this from a perspective that is as old as humans and science-based and factually, man, I keep going blank with the words I want to use here. What's wrong with me today?
You're thinking about bear hunting.
Yeah, I am. But I come at this from a place with a lot of data backing my side of it. They're coming at it from sheer emotion. They're not going to win the argument, and they know it, so they won't come on my show. But I wish they would. I really do wish they would.
Yeah, it would be interesting. You know, I think back about that dollar figure you threw out, you know, 300 million, and it's a ballpark figure, right? We can agree on that.
Yeah.
But
I almost want to look that up.
I'm in the throes of putting together a conservation film on sage grouse, greater sage grouse, and
nice.
Yeah, man, it has been quite the journey. It's been 2 years in the making, and we're wrapping things up right now, trying to beat a listing, you know, an ESA listing. But I just had a conversation today with a real sharp gal, and from the Audubon Society, and she, I mean, sharp, real sharp, been involved in sage grouse conservation for a long, long time. And she brought up the point about putting money back into monitoring and back into habitat restoration. You think about $300 million, what you could do with that if you were that organization and you really wanted to affect change and do some good. That's a lot of monitoring. That's a lot of habitat projects. That's a lot of things that money could go to, but it doesn't. The only ones who are funding that and working on it are hunters.
It's such a lopsided
not 100% true, because
not 100%, but yeah,
the Audubon Society, that gal was, I doubt she's a hunter. I didn't ask her if she was, but you know, for the most part, you're looking at hunting dollars. You know, Pittman Robertson monies that go to fund game and fish agencies, that go to fund federal studies and habitat projects.
Exactly. You just nailed it, man. Again, there are other organizations, you know, I don't care that maybe they're, you know, just nature, you know, hikes. What do you call them? They go hiking in nature all the time, or bird watchers or whatever. And they'll contribute a little bit, but when you kind of shake all this out, the nitty gritty, the lion's share of this money, it comes from hunters. Mm-hmm. And like you said, $300 million, compare that. Like the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation is a pretty big organization, you know, but they're only looking at $65 million annually, somewhere in that roughly neighborhood. Compare that to $300 million. It's because it's so easy to show some sad image of an animal that they probably got the image from a distasteful post that maybe a hunter put up.
Yep.
And show that at night to folks that don't understand what's going on. It's out of context. They don't understand wildlife management or hunting or anything like that, and their credit card is sitting right there ready to donate, and that's what happens. And so that $300 million, I mean, just look at it, not even from a habitat or conservation standpoint. It needs to cool down in this trailer, man. I'm dying in here. Not even from a conservation standpoint. What if you took that money and used it to purchase easements in landlocked public land areas throughout the West, or free up some of that, you know, public land access areas that could use that? Because what happens when that public land becomes accessible? That land then becomes valuable. It then becomes a resource, a usable resource that people benefit from, whether they're a hunter or they're a wildlife photographer or whatever they're doing, mountain biker or whatever. It is now, that is land that is going to thrive because of the access that is available. The wildlife will improve. You know, it's just the age old argument.
Yeah.
I mean,
well, and to take it full circle back to managing and controlling our what we put out there for messaging, right? So we go back to the HSUS, and they're running these ads that they've obviously pilfered from some Facebook page or some social media account. Whereas if we're not putting that content out there, they have no ammunition.
They don't have it. Yeah.
They have no ammunition to use. So that goes back to, okay, well, Todd, you're telling me what I can and can't. No, I'm not. I'm not telling you what you can and can't post. I'm just asking you to think before you post some stuff and go, yeah, I'm proud of that picture.
Yeah.
I'm honestly proud of that picture or that video, and I'm gonna put it up there. Okay.
I mean, I'm guilty of it. I've posted bad pictures in the past.
Oh, we all have.
We all have.
Especially back in the early days when social media was new, and you were just excited to share, your deer hunt or your successful elk hunt, or a great big pile of mallards, or whatever it might be. It might not have been the most tasteful picture. We've all done it.
I grew up in a time and a place where they would let school out for hunting season.
Yeah, I did too.
And so it took me a while to even figure out that we had such this adversarial issue going on with these anti-hunters, and I didn't even know they existed, right? And I'm talking 20 years ago.
Right. Or more.
Or more, yeah.
I don't mean to date you, dude, but seriously, it was longer than that.
Todd. Shut up, Todd. So, I always look at one thing I'm always hesitant to go down this road because I don't want to sound like my grandpa.
No,
but
I hear you.
I was in the military, right? I was in the Marines, and I had one of our company captains or whatever was talking about how every little thing reflects on the entirety of the Marine Corps. And there's always this 10%, this group of 10%. They're the ones that shine, and it doesn't matter if it's a specific religion or a military branch or a club or a government or a political party. There's always that 10% that does bad things that makes everybody else look bad. Yep. And it was like a week later, what happened? These Marines out of Camp Pendleton go out into somewhere in California and shoot a couple of wild horses illegally. So that doesn't get reported as two poachers killed some wild horses. No, it got reported 2 Marines killed wild horses. And that reflected negatively on the entirety of the Marine Corps and put shame upon all of us, right? And so that concept applies to us as hunters. We're a smaller group. We're 5% of the nation. We're very susceptible to negative press and bad press and the things that can turn people off as to our lifestyle. And that is very, very difficult to turn those people back into, a favorable attitude towards hunting.
Yeah.
That's the bottom line. So we just nobody's lecturing anybody about what they can and can't post.
Yeah.
All I am saying is, just think about how people that don't hunt would react to that. How would Aunt Biddy react to that? How would Uncle whatever react to that has never been outside of a concrete jungle in a big city?
Yep. Because we can use it to affect the opposite as well.
Exactly.
It doesn't we focused on the negative pretty much the entire time, and that's okay. But when we do it right, when we use social media as a tool and we do it right, it can be a powerful ally for us.
Totally.
We talk about hunters being divided. Man, we are. Where it seems like, you hunt this way, you're a bow hunter, I'm a rifle hunter, you're a long range guy versus this. And, you get into the world of waterfowl and it's, you got, goose hunters versus duck hunters, or guys that, we could go on ad nauseum.
Upland versus waterfowl.
Yeah. And so at the end of the day, we are all on the same team, and I have seen social media affect me personally to the point where I'm able to have connections with a larger group of people than at any other time in history. We go to the Western Hunt Expo, for example.
Yeah.
And I'm running into people that I know. I've never met these folks in my life, but because we follow each other on social media, it's like, Oh, hey, Bill. Hey, Todd, how's it going?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
we've never met, but because we're hunters, we're part of that brotherhood, that brother and sisterhood. And when it's used properly, man, that's a powerful tool that can bind us together and help us stay connected with each other. And yeah, we're a small percentage of the population, but we are a very passionate percentage of the population.
We're a feisty bunch. That's for sure. And that's what we got to really be careful of, because like you said, I look at it this way: outdoorsmen, I don't care if you just hunt geese and that's the only thing you pursue, or you're just a fly fisherman and maybe a deer hunter every once in a while. There's like two types of hunters. You have your casual hunter that kind of dabbles in it every once in a while. Then you have like your lifestyle hunters who this is what makes us who we are.
Yeah.
And we all have the same exact goal at the end of the day. And there's three things that we all look to achieve. We want that primal adventure. We want the memory, and we want a filled freezer. That's it. Those are the three things that all hunters are in pursuit of: primal adventure, the memory, and meat in the freezer. It's not like how the Humane Society of the United States looks at us and calls us trophy hunters. They call everything you could be in a field hunting pheasants behind a dog, and you're a trophy hunter in their mind. Yep. And we're not going to let them label us like that. I'm done letting them label us.
The interesting thing, sorry to interrupt you, but
oh, you're good, man.
You brought up the term trophy hunter, and I'm putting on my big game hat right here, my Eastman's hat, and when taken in that traditional Disney sense of that term, where your guys are going out and they're only interested in killing an animal for its antlers, that's no good. That's no good. But if we look at it, trophy hunting is conservation, to kind of tweak RMEF's line, because you've got guys that are willing to pay big money for habitat projects, big money to help maintain healthy herds of big game animals so they can achieve. There are trophies in those herds. I grew up in Michigan, man. There was a big buck was 2 years old. They just did not see that. You didn't see that. And you go to Iowa. My brother lives in Iowa now, and they got big deer running all over the place. They have
I'd love to whitetail hunt in Iowa, man. Gosh.
They have a different management model, and it's more of a trophy hunting mentality. Where it's like, we're going to manage these herds so we're producing the largest amount of mature breeding adult male animals that we can.
Yep.
And then we're going to manage for population control through antlerless tags, whether it's cow elk, doe fawn antelope, I mean, you name it. But I think we have to be careful. Back to the point, we have to be careful with that term trophy hunting, because again, it's easy to kind of pick on it. But if we really look at it, and you look at the Pope and Young Club, you look at Boone and Crockett Club, and what those organizations do, man, they're in it for balanced, healthy herds, because balanced, healthy herds produce high quality animals.
Absolutely. I think that the term trophy hunting, when it gets tossed around by the anti-hunting organization, obviously it's a negative connotation, right?
Right.
Oh, well, they're just trophy hunters. And so they're trying to portray the story of Bambi, that, somebody just shoots it and leaves it for dead or whatever. And that's what they're out there for. What they don't take into account is they think that their emotion outweighs the economies of this. And what I mean by that is, it is because of hunting elephants that elephants still exist.
Yes.
In Africa. Right. And when you're sitting here in the States with your, $10 cappuccino or whatever, complaining about people going to Africa to hunt and calling them trophy hunters, what you don't understand is that is not only conserving the species out there, because of the way that they manage them is very tightly managed, I guess is a way to put it. The jobs that provides, those people would not have that, and they're poverty stricken enough. So your emotions shouldn't outweigh the economy of this whole thing. And then bringing it back to the States, I'm a firm believer in the American system. I'm a free man. I will not be told by somebody who is clueless on wildlife management that my life is wrong. I'm the one that can trace roots to this lifestyle for as long as humans have been on this earth. It is not a new thing. This is my lifestyle. I know the benefits of it. I know what the outcome of proper hunting as a management tool is. So don't tell me that I'm wrong, because I'm not. Yeah, does that make sense?
100%. Yeah, 100%. It's that trophy hunting term, like we said, or like you said, it gets thrown around.
And, it does, yeah.
And I put it this way. I've never seen a Boone and Crockett animal that didn't get eaten.
Yeah, right. And that's another thing.
And long after that meat is gone, those antlers are up there on the wall.
Exactly. That's the memory part of those three things that we're searching for, right?
Yes.
It's a way to honor that animal. And you can call me a trophy hunter, because I do pursue the biggest, most mature animal I can find. I'm not saying I'm good at it, but I am saying I do pursue it. That's what I'm going after, right? And so, but that doesn't mean that I'm just I'm a so-called Humane Society of the United States definition of a trophy hunter. That's just not what it is.
Yep. No, I hear you. Oh, dude, let's take a breath.
Yeah.
That was, holy smokes. That was the fastest hour, I think, of my life that I've ever.
That did go by fast.
Yeah,
that did go by fast.
It did, big time. But
yeah.
So I just want to say thank you for jumping on here with me. This has been a super enjoyable conversation. I think we could sit here and record all night long,
Oh, me too.
Just keep going. We'll have to do it again sometime.
I'd love to get you on my show, man. I'd love to. Let's get on there, because I kind of do. I don't cover like upland and waterfowl very often, because I'm not way into waterfowl, and I should be, because of where I live. But upland game has been very limited for me up in North Idaho. The pheasants aren't doing great up here.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'd love to get you on and talk about that
let's
stuff.
Do it. No, let's do it. But let's get you out in that bear stand and see if you can go see that character of a bear you were telling me about. Maybe find a big one tonight. That'd be
I'm
cool.
looking for his grandpa. He shows up. He's there, but not when I'm there.
Yeah, they have a way of knowing. I tell you what.
For sure.
That's cool. Well, Jim, thank you very much. I appreciate your time. And
I appreciate it.
Good luck out there, man.
Hey, thanks a bunch. Thanks for having me on, man.
You betcha.
Let's do it again.
Anytime.
Appreciate it.